Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Radiant Lawcast. I'm your host, Seda, and joining me is my brilliant colleague, Jarryd Pillay. How are you doing, Jarryd?
I'm good, man. How you doing?
Good. It's a cold day in Cape Town.
It is cold today.
We decided to come to the office specifically for this because I think you've got very important things to tell us.
Yeah.
Cool. But we're going to chat about CI. For those who don't know, CI is what we call a Radiant Continuous Improvement. So, Jarryd, what is CI?
So CI is our abbreviated term for continuous improvement, but what it really is a mindset.
Okay.
It's always looking for ways to do things better. So not just being content with delivering things well, you want to deliver things even better every time you do it.
Okay. And then in a Radiant context, I know that it is, when I joined, it was, we can satisfy our clients, we can work on matters, but what's important at times more than anything is that we continuously improve. That's one of the cornerstones of which, this firm was founded. It's a very important thing. We all need to incorporate continuous improvement in our day-to-day lives. But I'm a lawyer, so are you.
Yeah.
And, if I've spent 4 years in law school and then another 2 years in training, and then probably I get onboarded, I train, I learn stuff, and then I get the hang of things, change may not be the best thing because from my understanding, improving comes with doing things differently sometimes.
Exactly.
And I think it might be difficult to implement for lawyers.
So you're 100% right. Like, I can't claim that I'm some sort of CI expert, okay? I'm not a lean Six Sigma guy.
The Godfather, yeah.
No, not at all. So I'm a procurement lawyer by trade.
Okay.
So I know how hard it is to change lawyers' minds. Because I don't know if you know this, but generally, lawyers don't like things to change. They like to keep them the way they are. And so what CI is to us is, so we've formed a continuous improvement working group within the firm, and we basically took on the task of selling this concept of change to lawyers. And essentially, we realized you got to tackle this. You can't just tackle this in one way. You have to break it down and hit it from three angles.
Okay.
Because, like you said, lawyers aren't trained for this stuff. Like they need to look at it in a different way. So we tried three things. We tried to simplify what CI actually means.
Okay.
We tried to really spell out the process and like knock off the edges to make actioning these improvement projects easy.
Okay.
And then we also try to encourage people and praise them for like the extra effort that this stuff takes,
Yeah. Thinking about it, right?
Yeah.
So when I think CI and I think change and I think, because I was part of the working groups that you led, where you're now encouraging us to try new things, try and look at the way we approach our work differently, right? So for me, the more I think about it, the concept of change is difficult for all of us to adopt. How do you sell it to your fellow colleagues? How do you sell it to, people who've qualified and they've worked on specific projects and accounts for a long time? And, clients haven't said they're dissatisfied. Clients haven't said that, look, Jarryd, I'm not happy with your service. In fact, more than anything, they'll say, I'm pretty satisfied with what you're doing. How do you sell that to someone to say, actually, do something different, change this, change that? How do you get people to buy into the idea?
So it's difficult. Like, it really is a tough process. Like, for us, usually when we propose a change, lawyers react first with skepticism. They don't really think that change is going to work, or they don't think it's going to help. And then they actually react with hostility because maybe the 3 or 4 minutes that they have between calls, where they would be grabbing a coffee, they actually now need to use to learn this new process or new system.
Yeah.
But ultimately, by doing that, they're keeping themselves in front of the market. They're keeping themselves always looking for better ways to delight clients. And they also are ultimately saving themselves time and hassle. Like, there's a lot of stuff that we do which is just waste. It doesn't add value.
Yeah.
So it's taking those aspects out of the lawyers there and giving them more time to do things that matter.
Okay. And one of the things that we try and do at Radiant, I know, is to eliminate waste. When we eliminate waste, we're better, we're more accurate, we're faster, It helps us achieve our objectives in a much better way. But you mentioned something which I found was very interesting. You said simplify, right? How does simplify help improve, I think, the adoption of CI amongst the firm or amongst people that you work with?
So this is the thing, right? When we tackled the challenge, we thought, okay, let's simplify it. We'll take all of these terms and the jargon that's used in this world of process improvement and actually put it in terms that lawyers identify with and connect with. Like, to me, that's simplifying it. Taking these sort of weird abstract concepts, Toyota Kaizen and all of these things, and you know what I mean? Putting them in like a way that lawyers would connect with. So we wrote guidance documents. We recorded hours of videos. We put it out there for everybody to see. We fleshed out a standard operating process and basically put it up. And we're so proud of ourselves. We're like, yes, we've simplified it and we put it out there. And that failed spectacularly. Like, absolute disaster.
Why do you think it failed? Why do you think it wasn't that easy? Why do you think it was a disaster initially?
Do you know why? Because we actually failed to connect what the way that we wanted people to think with why it should matter to them.
Yes.
Like, people are fundamentally first driven by the factors that they care about.
Yeah.
Like, yes, they understand that the firm's purpose is to fix the contracting problem, to always do things better.
Yeah.
But on a day-to-day basis, when you are churning hundreds of contracts, like you're negotiating, you in the thick of it, it's very hard to see how this world of process improvement is going to be helpful. And then, look, that's why I think it failed.
So I'm thinking about it now. I'm negotiating maybe, let's say, 10 agreements in a week. I'm on calls and I'm busy and my day is packed. And then Jarryd stops me and says, "No, Sarah, take a step back from what you're doing. Not that you're doing it wrong, but come with me, walk with me on this path of improving the way you're doing it." I can understand why there could be, a little pushback, but how did you overcome that eventually? Because you did say it was a struggle, but at Radiant, we don't look at struggle and then we just sit and we wait. We don't look at failure as, this thing that we now wear in the back of our backs, but we overcome. How did you overcome the initial struggle of getting people to buy into your idea of continuous improvement?
So this is the whole thing. We took on the challenge to figure out how to sell the concept of change to lawyers in general. So we thought first, let's figure out how to do this within the firm. Mm-hmm. And once we have that down, we'll be able to sell that concept to busy in-house lawyers who have established processes, are overworked, and essentially are set in their ways. Mm-hmm. And after our initial failure, we realized, what? We need to make that connection. Why does it matter to the individual?
Yes.
And we went back to the drawing board. We decided, let's come at this and have a little bit of a smaller goal. All we wanted to do was to ask our lawyers to take note of their workflow every day. Okay. And look for steps that either are annoying or add no value to the process. And honestly, that made all the difference. Like, literally just connecting that little dot. Made people understand why continuous improvement is so important to us as a firm.
Okay. So I guess there is value in, obviously when you've got big challenges, not to look at it and try and solve the problem, its entirety, and take small steps and, try solve the little problems first. And then you might just end up figuring out the whole change just from fixing one small thing, which I think is important. Something which we do at Radiant, we use a lot of technology. We use a lot of tools. Could you speak to any tools that you think we used in order to improve the way we work, in order to improve the process, that you felt, that made a huge difference in just making people believe in continuous improvement, believe in the idea of change?
Yeah, so we've got a few systems which actually I think have made a massive difference to how we work. So the one would be our internal knowledge base, which basically everybody contributes to. Think of it like a internal Wikipedia.
Okay.
what that helps is it helps us set out our approach to things, and then through people experiencing annoying bits of their work, they like tackle that, and then they figure it out for the next person.
Yeah.
And that's stored on our knowledge base, and essentially it helps us smooth through processes over time. And the more that we go through it, the more people contribute, the better it gets.
Okay.
And I think that, and the ability to track how many improvement projects are ongoing, how people are doing, what they're doing, connecting that in a centralized place and allowing everybody to look at it, actually like is transformational, because I can see what you're doing on your account, and then I can be like, wow, that's a really good idea. I should probably tell my client to do that.
Yeah.
So I think those two things have been absolutely massive.
And I have found it especially with the knowledge bases, because ultimately, so we have a lot of knowledge systems where we can all share information.
Yeah.
And we can get in there and then say, oh, Jarreyd's doing this. Jarryd, I can personally say it can make a difference in, you might think that my client's a media company and your client is a supplier of goods and services. Maybe yours is a tech company, maybe yours is a bank. They're in different worlds, but the way we'd approach contracting is probably the same or similar.
Exactly.
So that sharing of knowledge, I think, is very important. And then, it's like you said, it reduces the complexity of how you look at CI.
Yeah.
Because you might think that I need to invent something new just so that I can come up with this continuous improvement mechanism. I always sit down and be like, what can I do that's different? What can I do that's new? How can I pitch in? Because we're a fast changing firm.
Yeah.
We're a young firm, lots of young people, lots of energy, lots of ideas. And there is not a pressure, but just a feeling that, I want to reinvent the wheel. I want to be the next wow.
Yeah.
But oftentimes you just need to look at your neighbor and say, well, how are you solving this? How are you able to get your deals done so quickly? And then they might say, well, it might be something as simple as the tone you use in an email or the tone you use in a negotiation. And then someone will say, oh, wow, that makes all the difference. That's an improvement in itself.
Exactly.
I didn't have to go and think of the next big thing and the next big idea and all of that. But that's fascinating to me. So my next question would be, your experience as a procurement lawyer, how do you think it contributed to driving the continuous improvement initiative at the firm?
So this is the thing, right? After our initial failure attempt, and then we managed to connect the dots for people so they could make these small incremental changes just to the bits of the process that are a bit annoying.
Yeah.
We figured out that to sell these improvements, you need to establish trust. That's what the big difference is between selling it internally and selling it actually to large, complex organizations. Like in-house counsel needs to know that if they're going to try your revolutionary approach or even your small improvement, it's going to work, it's applicable for their specific circumstances, and it's sort of tried and tested. It's not going to cause additional hassle or risk. And I think by having my experience as a procurement lawyer with working with the organizations I have, getting that trust first from in-house counsel, letting them see that you actually know what you're talking about. You actually are not just doing it, but you're doing it better. That is what really is convincing when you build that rapport and then you say, why don't you try this?
Okay.
Once you've established that, then it's far easier for them to justify it to their internal stakeholders, and they'll go to bat for you. And that eventually creates the change that you want to see.
Well, then they can go and say, Radiant wants us to adopt this. And then, because it's coming from Jarryd, and it's like, I trust Jarryd. I think we can go with this. I think let's run with it.
Yeah.
How does that work internally? The whole trust mechanism. We're colleagues.
Yeah.
We'll have a glass of wine every now and again. We'll go out and have a drink. We'll have team dinners, all of that. That can build trust. But if you come to me and say, Sen, I want you to change this, how do I trust that your way is right and the way I've been doing it all of a sudden maybe isn't the best?
So this is like ultimately we use Radiant as a little laboratory, right?
Yes.
So we run experiments, we test things out, and we literally have a scientific methodology. So we have a cycle which we call plan, do, check, act, PDCA cycle.
Yeah.
So before I would suggest like you implement the change in your account, I would have already run it with a select group of accounts or a select group of lawyers, and I would have planned that experiment. I would have conducted it. I would have observed what the result was, and then I would publish it to you and the rest of the team widely. So like when we suggest these things, it's not just out of the blue. Like it's really thought through, it's tested, and before rolling it out, we make sure it's sick.
Yeah. And I can appreciate that. And I think, being a young firm also just makes it slightly easier, I think.
Yeah.
I can't imagine it would fly in a, suit environment where I've got 25 years in the game, and you're telling me, actually do it this way. It might not sell as well. So back to talking about your clients, actually. So you did mention that, they have to trust that once you have to build that rapport and they have to trust you.
Yeah.
How do you consider yourself an extension of your clients, and how do you see that relationship as being important in, implementing CI initiatives?
So the best people to fix a particular problem are the ones who deal with it every day.
Yeah.
Like if you're at the coalface and you are seeing what the impact of not just what's written on the page, but you're seeing the impact of the whole process that it's gone through before it gets to you, you know acutely what is going to help.
Yeah.
And what is not going to help. So having that trust with them and seeing the problems, not just from the perspective of, I'm going to try and make my life easier, so when I negotiate this contract, I'm going to benefit.
Yeah.
You're trying to implement improvements which are going to benefit everybody upstream from you.
Mm-hmm.
And seeing yourself as an extension of your client's legal team is exactly that. You're using empathy to feel what they feel,
Yeah.
and implement improvements to solve their problems.
Okay. Just to almost wrap up. So the CI working group is effective. I was part of it, and I've seen some of the things you guys are rolling out. It's brilliant. So thank you for that. What I would then ask you is, what are your plans in terms of, as a team, how are you going to continue to drive it forward? Do you have any immediate thoughts in mind? Are there things you're thinking about, continuously improving the way we do things at Radiant? Are we just disrupting for the sake of disrupting? Or, do you guys have any plans where you're like, no, we know where we're going, we know how we're driving the ship?
Yeah, so it's super exciting to be part of this side of the firm, because to me, I think it's the most important thing we do, right? Because yes, we are really good at negotiating contracts. Yes, that is our bread and butter. But we negotiate contracts to learn how to do it better.
Yes.
And while incremental change is important, and that's what the crux of continuous improvement is, it doesn't stop us from making leaps, where there are truly transformational things, right? So to give you an example, in fact, I'll give you two examples.
Cool.
The one thing we're testing is an approach called objective-led contracting.
Okay.
So what it is not looking at two sets of positions which are just opposed on the page.
Okay.
What you're really trying to do is you're understanding your client's objectives. What do they really want from a deal?
Okay.
And you're understanding the counterparty's objectives as well.
Okay.
So when you do that, you'll have an understanding of the number of issues that could pop up when both you and I, let's say you want to sell something, I want to buy something, you want your service standardized, I want it customized for me.
Yes.
Now we have different objectives, and there's going to be common issues that pop up, right?
Of course.
Having an understanding of both sides allows you to come to a much smarter compromise, and allows you to propose things which you just wouldn't be able to see if you didn't look at it from that perspective. So we have a data structure which is essentially collecting a whole range of data points and lining them up so we can look across them and see what is the market standard when it comes to like a particular issue.
Yeah, it could be a certain clause in an agreement, like, we're negotiating this, but actually, you might want it a particular way, but let's have a look at how everyone else is doing.
Really, yeah. And I don't think there are many companies out there that want to be on their own, like want to try something that's completely not market standard.
Yeah.
And ultimately, that's what speeds up contracting. You're building relationships. You're trying to get business done.
Okay.
And that's so objectively contracting is the one thing. And the other thing is, while we have a really human-centric approach to how we work, we're not opposed to robots either. So we are testing a way to safely incorporate generative AI like GPT-4 into our workflow. And once we've tested that in our little laboratory and we're happy that it's safe and makes sense, then we'll roll that out to accounts as well. And again, I don't want to freak anyone out. We'll roll it out in a way that makes sense and ultimately benefits our clients by saving them time, getting us to focus on more strategic things than run-of-the-mill summaries or risk reports.
Well, I'm not freaked out. I don't think anyone else here is. Obviously, like you said, the big question that lawyers always ask is, okay, why? It's like toddlers, right? You give it, don't do that. Why? That's the one question. Growing up, my English teacher used to say, there's five things. It's why, what, how, when, where. Why is arguably the hardest one to answer because there's always a why at the end of every answer. So it's like, do this, why? Change this, why? And you always have to sell someone up to a point when, not that you've sufficiently explained it, but to a point where they're reasonably satisfied that, okay, cool, I get what you're saying. This is why. Let me run with it. Yeah. Cool. And then you spoke about AI. I'm sure that'll bring about new CI initiatives.
It will, yeah. And it's going to be exciting. Like, it's a really exciting time to be in the industry, to be practicing law, like really working on this kind of problem. And I think it can only help, right? So like no lawyers out there are still drafting contracts on a typewriter.
No.
Like, it's just a tool that's going to make the workflow easier. It's inevitable.
It's inevitable. Jarryd, thank you so much for your time. Cool. We'll have another session about AI, I'm sure, once we've figured it out.
Yeah.
But thank you so much, man. Appreciate it.
Thanks a lot. Cheers.
Thank you everyone for joining us. Catch us again next time on the Radiant Lawcast. Cheers.